right before its biggest test ever, World War II, the Soviet Union was a real puzzle. Was it this mighty industrial giant ready to take on anyone? Or was it actually a fragile state, a house of cards just waiting to collapse? Today, we're going to unpack that very paradox. So here's the big question we're tackling. By 1941, was the Soviet Union's economy in a weak spot? And spoiler alert, the answer isn't a simple yes or no. The truth is way more interesting than that. All right, so first up, let's build the case for Soviet strength. Because on the surface, the transformation the country went through in just over a decade was, well, it was nothing short of breathtaking. I mean, think about this. Under Stalin's 5-year plans, the USSR basically did a century's worth of the Industrial Revolution in just 13 years. That's an incredible pace. It's like watching history on fast forward.
And look, this wasn't just them patting themselves on the back. The Soviet Union was making a huge splash on the world stage. By 1941, its factories were churning out more than Great Britain's, the birthplace of the whole Industrial Revolution. And it was breathing down the neck of Nazi Germany. It was becoming a true global economic power.
If you really want to get a feel for this ambition, you gotta look at Magnitogorsk. This was an entire city, a massive industrial complex, built from absolute scratch out on the steppe. Its whole purpose? To produce 4 million tons of iron a year. It was a monumental symbol of Soviet industrial might. But it wasn't all just about smokestacks and raw industry. The Moscow Metro was the ultimate showpiece. We're talking marble designs, revolutionary art. It was way more than just a subway. These were literally underground palaces for the people, designed to inspire total awe. So, a pretty impressive picture, right? A powerful, modernizing state taking its place on the world stage. But that's only half the story. And this is where we get to the real heart of the paradox. Who or what paid the price for all this incredible progress? Okay, so now let's peel back the curtain. Let's look past those shiny metro stations and those giant steel mills, because that's where you find the deep, structural cracks in the whole foundation. 0. That's the number. The number of washing machines made for regular people over 12 years of this massive industrial boom. It tells you everything you need to know about where the state's priorities were and, more importantly, where they weren't. And this wasn't just some minor inconvenience. This quote really brings home the human cost. It shows that all that steel, all that iron, it did absolutely nothing to improve the daily lives of ordinary citizens. The focus was entirely on heavy industry. And okay, here's another huge crack in the facade. For all their big projects, the Soviets had to bring in outsiders for their crown jewels. The complex engineering for the Moscow Metro, that was British. The city plan for Magnitogorsk, American. The architecture, German. See the pattern? The USSR had tons of manpower, sure, but it was desperately short on the skilled experts needed to pull off its own grand vision. So why, right? Why would you build this incredible industrial machine, but neglect your own people and have to rely on foreigners? Well, it wasn't an accident. It was a very deliberate, very strategic choice by Stalin. And it has a name, guns over butter. You can see it right here. As war clouds gathered over Europe, Stalin just pivoted the entire economy towards defense. By 1940, a full third, 1/3 of the entire national budget was going to the military. So yeah, not having washing machines wasn't an oversight. It was the plan. The goal was to get ready for a fight. And the results of this laser focus? They were absolutely formidable. We're talking 9 new aircraft factories built in just 1 year, 230 tanks rolling off the assembly lines every single month. The Soviet Union wasn't just an industrial powerhouse anymore. It was a military-industrial powerhouse, plain and simple. But, and this is a huge but, all of this military strength was built on a foundation of absolute catastrophe in one key area: agriculture. Stalin's policy of collectivization was a complete disaster. He targeted the kulaks, the country's most experienced farmers, as class enemies. In resistance, they destroyed their own crops and livestock, leading to a horrific man-made famine and a crippled agricultural sector that would haunt the USSR for decades. So where does that leave us? With a country that could churn out tanks like nobody's business, but couldn't produce a single washing machine. Let's bring these conflicting pictures together for the final verdict. I mean, the paradox is laid out right here. On one hand, you have massive industrial output, formidable military might,
and super fast modernization. But on the other hand, no consumer goods, a critical skills gap, and an agricultural sector in ruins. It was a giant, for sure, but a very, very flawed one.
So, to go back to that big question we started with, was the Soviet economy weak? The answer has to be no. You just can't call an economy that outproduced Great Britain weak. But it was incredibly brittle. The best way to describe it is exactly this: an industrial juggernaut with deep and exposable flaws. Powerful, yes, but also profoundly vulnerable. And all of this leaves us with one last, much bigger question to chew on. The Soviet story forces us to ask what a strong economy really is. Is it defined by raw output, the number of tanks and tons of steel? Or is it about the well-being of its people? It's a question that's just as relevant today as it was in 1941.